He wants to watch.
Hey,
Thank you.
big brother is behind us.
Sister is in front of us.
No. Good. Mike's You're going to have to unmute him before I say
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Perfect.
How about me?
I can't hear you.
Oh, great.
All right, well, good evening.
We had you on mute.
You ready?
I didn't hear that. I can hear some background noise.
Okay, hi, good evening. My name is Patty Nelson, and I'm a member of the chapter of the local chapter of the Citizens Climate Lobby, just one of the many groups that are sponsoring this event tonight. Welcome, and thank you for coming, and thank you, Mary Ellen Murphy, for being our moderator tonight. Mary Ellen has been in radio for over 35 years. She is the host of Good Morning Grand Haven on 92.1 WGHN. She is a proud mom of 23-year-old twins and a Gigi,
Grandmother.
to 6-month-old granddaughter Charlotte. And in her spare time, she enjoys the beach, theater, and tap dancing.
Thank you for being here, and I probably should remind you to turn your phones off, or at least the ringers and the notification. I will be introducing candidates for each panel, and then we'll get right to the questions. We have 2 volunteer timekeepers, Crystal Boyd and Jeffrey Miller, right up front here. I understand they're really fierce, so candidates, respect them when they show you that 1-minute yellow sign and the time's up red card. We'll be doing something a little bit different this evening. I'll be asking very few questions, and the candidates will have plenty of time to answer them. At the end of each round of questions, they'll have an opportunity to interact with each other on points where they may differ. The candidates have been able to study the potential questions before tonight, but do not know the specific questions they will be asked, and neither do I. I'll pull them out of this magic bag. Each of the discussions will last about 35 minutes. The first panel will be the mayoral candidates, the second the BLP candidates, and the third panel will be the city council candidates. At the end of discussions this evening, take some time to talk to the candidates, because that's why they're here, and they have tables in the room. We do want to thank the League of Women Voters for their advice and for sharing the nameplates we're using and the Time's Up cards with us. And we do need to thank our co-hosts and underwriters, many who have contributed the questions we're asking the candidates tonight. The Grand Haven High School Green Club, the Kitchell Lindquist Hartgert Dunes Preserve, Grand Haven Lakeshore Citizens Climate Lobby, local members of Wetlands Watch, Lakeshore Water Protectors, the Michigan chapter of the Sierra Club, the West Michigan Environmental Action Council, and the Alliance for the Great Lakes. A special thanks to the Grand Haven Energy Organization and the Michigan League of Conservation Voters for being the significant underwriters of this town hall, which is the first significant public discussion of Grand Haven's energy, environmental, and conservation issues by our potential elected leadership. If you are willing and able to contribute, we ask that you do. There is a donation basket on the refreshment table, and you can help yourself to refreshments as well. We also want to thank the Grand Haven Tribune for live streaming the event this evening. And one more thing, this event, it's here to help you and others learn more about our candidates. The election is Tuesday, November 2nd. If you are going to be out of town, we ask that you vote absentee. We've provided absentee applications for you, which are on the refreshment table. Fill one out tonight. Drop it in the lockbox at the front of City Hall when you leave. And if you're not registered to vote, please do so. There's coffee, there's water, there's cookies, there's candy, there's all kinds of snacks back there. So please feel free to enjoy them at any time this evening. And now we're going to get to it. We've done the straw. So our first question is going to go to Kathy McNally, and I'm going to introduce both of our candidates right now. Kathy McNally, Captain U.S. Coast Guard, retired, a lifelong outdoors enthusiast. Kathy moved to West Michigan when she was in high school, she says. She was drawn to Lake Michigan's scenic shoreline in a way that shaped her life. She has 25 years as a Coast Guard career, including a diverse range of assignments, including 3 tours in coastal Alaska, her personal favorites. She taught maritime law enforcement at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy in New London, Connecticut, and joint operational planning at the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island. She commanded an industrial base in Ketchikan, Alaska, that repaired ships, buoys, and remote communications high sites, and provided medical, housing, and personnel support to Coast Guard members and their families. She served as a legal advisor to the 8th Coast Guard District Commander in New Orleans, the federal official principally responsible for safety of navigation and marine environmental protection on the Gulf Coast and Western River System. She has lived in a historic home at First and Franklin since retirement 14 years ago. With family members, she owns a small business that operates rental properties in town. And Bob Manetza, our current mayor and candidate for re-election. Bob and his wife Devin moved here from Holland in 1978, made Grand Haven their home and raised their family here. Bob has served the people of Grand Haven for many years as chair of the Planning Commission and the Environment and Natural Resources Committee, as a member of City Council and mayor. He's a retired engineer from private industry, and he's used that experience in his public service to understand problems and seek positive forward-looking outcomes for the benefit of the entire community. He was an NRRC chairman from 2002 to 2009 and helped establish the Resource Recovery Center on Comstock, developed a native street planting list and compiled information on legacy groundwater pollution, and proposed that Grand Haven become the first clean corporate citizen city, emphasizing recycling and waste minimization. It is his vision for Grand Haven to respect and utilize the natural green infrastructure wherever possible. He has proposed council goals to protect our urban forest, environmentally sensitive areas, and habitats large and small. He believes our way of life is sustained by our connection to nature. So let's get to the questions. And Kathy, you are first because you had the correct straw, whatever it was we had. Toothpick. All right. This question comes from the Michigan chapter of the Sierra Club, Kathy. What steps would you take as an elected official to ensure that Grand Haven's consumable water resources continue to be safe, affordable, and environmentally responsible?
I'm going to find my notes and then I'll respond. I think that initially the issue that I would address is ensuring that we are, can you guys hear me?
A little bit closer,
Okay,
please.
yeah.
There you go, right there.
Ensuring that we are abating lead water pipes within our system, which I think is going on within the city now, but I think needs to continue. I'm guessing that everybody saw the news about Benton Harbor this week and about the lead in their system, and I think that Michigan cities as a whole have infrastructure issues that we're all wrestling with. The cost of abatement of lead is very difficult, but I think that should be a priority. I think the next priority we have to look at is assessing and doing a comprehensive cleanup of the contamination we know exists on Harbor Island, because I think the potential for release of contaminants into the river and washing down to our water intake system exists. It may not be a huge risk, but I think over time the risk increases, and we need to do a comprehensive cleanup of the island. The third thing I would say is we need to protect the watershed that feeds our water system. I mean, we have a Audubon report recently released on the Grand River Coastal Corridor and the importance to our ecosystem of protecting the water system generally, the wetlands associated with it, and making sure that the filtration that happens naturally through our watershed is protected. That's what I've got.
All right, Bob Manetza, what steps would you take as an elected official to ensure that Grand Haven's consumable water resources continue to be safe, affordable, and environmentally responsible?
Okay, can you hear me? Or do I need to?
A little bit closer.
Okay, I can't get a lot closer, but I'll try. This is the story of my life, sorry. Yeah, we start in a pretty good place here because the Now's draws this lake water through the floor of Lake Michigan, so it's pre-filtered through the sand. It's lake water, it's surface water, and we clean it, treat it to the high standard. We've implemented additional testing of the water just in the past year, just to make sure that what we are delivering is free of contaminants. We also have recently upgraded our sewer plant, so we're using non-chlorine treatment systems, and so we're not putting stuff back in, which is a problem. We have tie-ins with Grand Rapids and Muskegon systems for redundancy, so we have a lot of capacity and we have extra redundancy, so as far as delivering clean water, we're in good shape there. It is surface water. It's not like the wells in the interior of the county, which we've been depleting the aquifers because so much development has occurred there. So what would we do to ensure that it stays clean? I think, as Kathy said, you want to make sure that you don't put additional contaminant into the water. It's pretty dilute coming through the lake. We're not running out of water, obviously. We have high water, so that's not an issue, but we want to make sure that we watch anything that might bleed into the water as far as contamination, watch our testing regimen so that we know that we are delivering good, clean water to the people. And basically, I would support making any capital improvements that we need for, whether it's the treatment of the water system, the distribution of the water system, the lead copper rule compliance, stuff like that, and any newer technologies that come along. So I would support any of those investments.
Okay, there are some things that you agree on. This is an opportunity for both of you to have a discussion.
I have to say that I'm in agreement with Bob in that on these issues, I think we're probably pretty well aligned. I think the testing is important, and I think that to the extent that we're looking to improve infrastructure, we need to be on the alert generally as a community for state and federal funding that may come down through the proposed national infrastructure bill and things like that. So that's, I guess, the only thing that I would add that might assist our community in abating some legacy costs that we're going to struggle with financially.
And I guess the only thing I'd like to say is not really a point to any of this, is I'd like to assure everyone that in terms of compliance with the lead and copper rule, because we draw our water from Lake Michigan, and it's slightly alkaline, it chemically is fairly neutral, and it tends to plate out on the inside of pipes. Therefore, the lead deposition that we might get in a place like Flint, we don't get that here, whether we replace our lead lines or not. So we haven't had a problem with it. We would only have a problem where we have a broken line or something that disturbs the pipes. But chemically, we're in good shape as far as protection from lead. And as we get rid of the lead lines, we'd be better. So.
All right, we'll move on to the next question. And this is for you, Kathy. Would you support restoring Harbor?
Can I interrupt for a
Yes, you
second?
may. Go ahead.
I understood we were going to alternate questions.
Yeah.
So I had the first one. I think Bob's up.
My
Yeah,
man.
Thank you.
I was willing to duck.
What's that? I'm used to hiding behind a microphone and nobody's seeing me, so this is a new thing for me.
We're all good.
Okay. Bob, would you support restoring Harbor Island to a natural state for public recreation? And this is courtesy of Wetlands Watch.
Okay, so yes, to the extent that's possible. You know, the original natural state of the island is long gone. It was a vegetated sandbar in the river, been vastly modified by man-made human uses over the years, but you know, it could be restored to a functionally natural state. I think that if you do the remediation you must do, create a cap or a top which nature can act upon in order to restore a natural state on that, and then it could be developed either for, whether it's for human recreation or for natural habitat or natural purposes. It could be restored back to something that resembles a natural state, functions like a natural state, and you know, already a lot of the island is developed as soccer fields, common areas, boating facilities. So there's recreational opportunity that exists today. So I think you're really talking about the sim site. I think most people are focusing on that. Excuse me. And by charter, the PLP has to determine how much of that site they're going to relinquish. It's a 27-acre site. They were talking about keeping about 13 of it for utility purposes, and that's their right to keep utility purposes there. But the balance of it can become a natural area suitable for recreation or simply for natural functions to exist, so that natural operation of ecosystems, which largely gets undervalued by humans, can return to the site. I don't support private development on the site. I'd like to see it as natural wetland or recreational as is practical to do, and just let it go at that.
Kathy, would you support restoring Harbor Island to a natural state for public recreation?
Well, I would agree with the mayor and say yes to the extent fiscally possible. But I don't think that restoring it to a natural state necessarily means leaving existing recreational improvements out there. So if the question is, do I agree with restoring it to a natural state, I guess I'm going to have to say not entirely. I think that I would say that the shoreline along Harbor Island should be a buffer that allows for migratory bird use and riparian activities, but I think that the boat launch out there, the ball fields out there, I'm not sure that the question is entirely about leaving what's out there and keeping it green and recreational. I understand the question to be, would we let it go back to nature? And I probably would say not. I would not do that entirely, though I might dedicate a portion of it as natural with walkways and things that people could access to recreate in.
All right, this is an opportunity for you to have a discussion.
Okay. Yeah, and similar to Kathy, I'm focusing on the sim site in this answer and not necessarily talking about modifying the other recreational attributes that are there. I think they function well, they were well planned, and well appreciated by the public. So focusing on the sim site or the balance of it that's available for something else to happen there, that's where I would see it most practically as a return to nature type thing. It'll never be truly in its original natural state, but it can be something that functions that way. So that's I guess that's the basis of my answer.
And the only thing I would add is if you walk that soccer field much of the year, it's marshy. So there's wetland out there that's trying to reclaim the island, let's just say. And so I would say we need to respect what the river system is trying to do, but we don't want to give up what is otherwise valuable space to the community. So I think there's a balance we're going to need to find, and I would welcome input from the conservation groups because I think they have good insights, and I think they also appreciate recreation opportunities. So that's what I would add.
Would you like to respond to that, Bob?
I'm good. I appreciate
Okay.
that.
Our last question. Kathy, high water levels have been significant problems in Grand Haven in recent years, though moderate at the moment. Please share your concerns about future high water challenges and what we as a community can expect as solutions. And this is courtesy of the Grand Haven Energy Organization.
Thank you. All right, what I have on this is I believe that we are going to see a future with heavier rains for more sustained periods of time, and I think that some of our winter snow is likely to be rain instead. So I think that I think what it said was, what are my concerns? My concerns are that we will lose shoreline to subsidence or erosion, and I also am concerned that within the city, some of our infrastructure has really aged and is already not meeting needs. Some of the storm drains, for instance, Harbor Drive is underwater when there's a heavy rain. The north end of 5th Street at Adams is from my perspective, is a disgrace that the city created by the development at Grand Landing. So, I mean, I have a friend who lives down there who's had her home sandbagged around her home for 10 years. So, I am concerned that as we recapitalize our infrastructure, we need to make sure that we plan for additional capacity for storm drains particularly. And I think that we need to look for ways to increase green space, decrease hardscape, and improve percolation and permeable surfaces. So, for instance, maybe we impose requirements that driveways have or parking lots have permeable or at least some kind of sophisticated drainage system so that we don't get additional runoff. Those are the kinds of things I think we need to look at.
Bob?
Okay, so, yeah, lake and river water levels sure peaked last year over the past couple of years. And they've gone down now, they'll undoubtedly rise again. We need to be prepared for that and plan for it. Now's the time to prepare for that to the extent that we can. You know, high water impacts to Grand Haven cost us a lot of money and grief over the past couple of years. And we had the flooded neighborhood on Adams Street. We lost our Chinook Pier buildings to the mold because water filled the basement underneath, or the crawl space under them. Severe beach erosion, damage to roads and drains. The marina was for a time shut down because the electrical system was underwater. It was kind of an exciting time for us, but so far, unlike some communities like South Haven, our water system, our water treatment system, and our sewer system have not been threatened. They're on high enough ground, so we have an advantage there. We don't have to redo some of this. Our master plan did have some provisions in it for resiliency in the face of water problems such as this, such as larger setbacks for new construction to water or higher elevations or just basic ways of protecting your new construction from being vulnerable. And I think that we ought to make sure that those are up to date and make sense. You know, the rise and fall of Great Lakes is a complex balance of evaporation and precipitation. And a lot of that's outside of our control. To the extent that we can lessen our footprint for climate change, that may help, but most of this comes from elsewhere. So there's not a lot we can do except to react to it. So, you know, we can attempt to, like I say, we can attempt to make sure that what we build new is more resilient and what we have existing is protected as well as we can. And otherwise, I think we're going to find ourselves in a cycle of repairing damage as it happens and trying to make everything new, taking into account the fact that water levels are going to come back up. Thanks.
Would you like to respond to that, Kathy?
To be honest, I agree.
We're doing good on time, so
Keep going.
Yeah,
we're going to keep going.
give us another question.
And this is for Bob.
No,
No.
did Bob
No.
go last? I think this, well,
No,
yes
no,
it is.
no, this
You
is
are.
mine. This is mine.
Bob's.
You
Go.
can
Good.
have it.
No,
Yes.
it's okay. I just didn't want to put you at an unfair disadvantage.
You
Bob,
have a misconception here.
it's well known that there are environmental problems on Harbor Island. Obviously, we need to wait for federal and state agencies to better identify those problems. However, it is crucial that we plan ahead. As a leader in our community, how would you go about developing a solution and identifying the funding for that solution? And this is courtesy of Grand Haven Energy Organization, the question.
Yeah, this is probably one of the best questions of the night. So, yes, there are serious problems on Harbor Island. They're legacy problems. They're problems that have been in place for generations. And a lot of it has to do with the history of the island, the fact that it was sawmills were there. There was a lot of use of the island where people were careless. A dump was there. They used to burn the trash. Decided that the way you cover up the trash is with coal ash. That was beneficial fill. All that stuff is out there. And when we closed the dump in 1970, it was closed, certified closed by the state. Apparently it was never capped. They must have just closed the gates. And then they covered it with ash, and there's Literally, the two intermingle at the interface between the trash and the ash. So this is all a serious problem. It's hard to isolate any one from another. The city's already begun to solicit proposals for a contractor to work on proposals to remediate the underlying trash or the areas outside the coal combustion residual containment areas. And so we're looking at contractors right now, qualifications. We'll be hiring somebody to help us prepare solutions for that. We don't know for sure yet how we're paying for the consultants or for sure how we're going to pay for the remediation, which is becoming astronomical. We are looking for someone with a lot of experience working with Eagle and EPA. Now, Eagle and EPA don't propose solutions for us. They tell us that's your problem, figure out a solution, we'll tell you if we like it. And so we're in that mode of we have to come up with solutions that work, that make sense, that don't bankrupt the city, and that Eagle and EPA will approve. So that's going to be an interesting situation. So far, BLP has been working with Golder Associates, but mainly on the coal ash residual, coal combustion residual, the coal ash. They've been working on that. As far as how we're going to fund all this, we're looking for outside sources. We're hoping that the federal government prints a whole bunch of money and sends it to us. And we're hoping that there's state and federal grants, legitimate sources of money, because clearly it exceeds the capacity of the city to deal with all of these problems. We can get solutions, we can get ideas, we can get a path forward, but the ultimate solution, depending on the path we take, is going to be many, many millions of dollars. And so I don't have the answer on how we're going to fund this yet. We're looking for sources, we're looking for ways to get this mess taken care of.
Kathy, as a leader in our community, how would you go about developing a solution and identifying the funding for that solution for Harbor Island?
I think you're going to have to start with a consultant, as sounds like the city already is. I think that there are things we might learn from other small Michigan communities that have gone through this, and we should be benchmarking with them. And some of them have organized to share lessons learned, and I think we ought to tap into that, because there are a number of, particularly in the PFAS cleanup arena, there are a number of Michigan communities like Rockford and Ann Arbor's had issues there. There are several that are doing two things. One is they are putting political pressure on legislators, both at the state and federal level, to help fund cleanups. And the other thing is they're banding together because it gives them a little more muscle, because they're small communities and they need a louder voice. So I think Grand Haven has a unique position at the mouth of the state's greatest river. And I think that we need to hammer home to everybody who will listen to us how important this watershed is. So I agree with everything Bob has said, but I think we need to reach out as broadly as we can. And our problem in doing that is we are a small community and we have a lean staff, and we really are going to struggle with that unless we can link up with other communities who are similarly situated. And in addition to what he's proposed, I would say that is what I would suggest.
Would you like to add anything, Bob?
No, I think that's a great point, and a great idea, and we do reach out to other communities when we have similar problems. We recently had a meeting to talk about beach safety. Had communities all up and down the lakeshore chiming in on beach safety. I mean, other communities that may have similar situations and have already gone through this probably have lessons learned or pitfalls to avoid. And there's probably very valuable information. Our site may be unique in many ways, but it also is going to have some commonality. So anytime you can learn lessons from others, yeah, do that. I think that's a great point.
Kathy?
I've got nothing further. Thank you.
One more question, Phil? Do we have time for one more question? All right, this is our last question. It's Kathy first. Let me pull it out of my magic bag here.
Okay, don't pull the one that I really don't want to try to have to answer.
I don't. I've only looked at them once. I've had nothing to do with this.
And after the meeting, I'd like to figure out who put that one in, because I need to know what they think. Go ahead.
All right, Kathy. Kathy, do you support the 60-year vision first established for former Mayor Bill Creason in 1962 to restore as much City of Grand Haven waterfront for permanent public access whenever a change in land use occurs, including when land use changes on Harbor Island? This question is courtesy of Grand Haven Lakeshore Chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby.
Yes, I do. I don't have much more to say on that except I think green space on our riverfront, public green space, is the most important thing we can do to keep our community vibrant. And I think I think some of you may know I got into this because of what it's interesting. I would call them density and scale issues for the first version of the Beyond the Pier master plan that came out. And I wrote Mayor Bob a letter that talked about density and scale, and I encouraged a bunch of my friends to write similar letters, and neighbors and other people I knew in the community. And one of the people who wrote to him and shared her letter made me look at it in a whole different way, and that was Bobby Sabine. And what she wrote about was open space. I'm talking about don't build big buildings downtown because I don't like density and the scale is wrong. She's looking at it and saying we need to preserve open space. And I went, oh, that's really what I meant. So I look at the next version of the Beyond the Pier master plan that just was passed by the city council, and it has 2 large buildings down on our public riverfront that I don't think we can afford to pay for, and I think are not good for us going forward. One of them is all about commercial development. I don't think we should be in the business of commercial development. The other one is a 4-season farmers market when we have 2-season farmers. All right, I know it's a bigger project than that. I get that part, but we already have event space in the community center that's not being used. We already have decided we're going to make the diesel plant. It's going to a developer who's going to use it for event space. We are going to compete with other private event spaces like Portobello, who depends upon that business for their livelihood. We should not be in the business of putting big buildings down on our riverfront. We should have picnic tables, picnic shelters, fire pits, games, low impact things, access for kayaks, things like that. That's my vision for the riverfront.
Bob?
Okay, so, yeah, the 60-year vision by Mayor Creason actually was, and I looked up the 1963 master plan and the 1967 riverfront redevelopment plan. What they proposed was a mixture of open access along the waterfront, some smaller parks along the waterfront, relocating Harbor Drive, and putting commercial buildings on the waterfront with a walkway between the water and the buildings. I mean, that was the original vision. Some of it was to have tax-based and commercial activity for vitality. Some of it was to make sure there was some open space and certainly a walkway along the river. You know, that, of course, has evolved because times have changed, and 60 years is a long time to hold the same vision. I think that people have become more interested in having the space more open. When we put up the Chinook Pier buildings in the mid-1980s, there was a recognition that there was a reason to have buildings like that, to have that kind of activity, that kind of draw for the waterfront, things for people to do, which are more of a commercial nature without compromising their ability to walk along and enjoy the water. And even Harbor Island itself, which was in the 60s, was light industrial. In the 90s, Mayor Ringelberg presided over a plan to turn that into more recreational space, somewhat like it is now, except for, of course, where Sims was. So I think these plans and these visions evolve, and that's appropriate for a community as the community changes. But I think there's always been a sense from these visionaries to more modern ones that, you know, there is a place for buildings along the water, provided that people can still get to the water, enjoy it. And those buildings have to cater to the needs and the desires of the people. They shouldn't be something like residential buildings which are exclusive in nature. They shouldn't be offices or something else which doesn't invite people in. If you're going to have these buildings, they need to be something that really supports and caters to the needs and desires of the people. And I think I've heard some of that from people since Chinook Pier has been torn down. You know, yeah, the open space is nice, we like that, we kind of miss what was there. Maybe just because it was there and they were used to it, maybe not, people get used to all kinds of things, but I think there was a purpose in that. And the Chinook Pier master plan has a lot of things in it. Many of them are more food for thought than hard plans, but they're directions you might go as you proceed to reuse the land. And so I think that the vision, going back to Mayor Creason and the mayors in between, and the visions and the plans, even the 2005 Waterfront Strategic Plan, there was always a sense that open space is better, public access is better, don't put exclusive uses there, but have something to do there, which is somewhat organized and as a draw for people. So I think that there's still a place for that.
Kathy?
Okay, I guess I particularly want to pick on the plan to put I'm going to call it a restaurant shops complex at the north end of the riverfront, which would go in at the site of our present farmers market. Our present farmers market needs some upgrades. There's no doubt in my mind, and it needs electrical power. It needs water service. It needs some. I'd like to see an awning extended so that when it rains, the rain doesn't run down the backs of the necks of all the farmers that are trying to sell their wares. But I don't think I think its scale is appropriate for a town with 11,000 people, regardless of how many visitors we get in the summer. There's a very small nucleus of people who are going to pay for improvements down there. Now, the shop complex, the shop and restaurant complex down at the north end, where the farmers market currently is, the only way it will work financially is if it's on a 30-year lease. And I don't think we should give up any of our riverfront for 30 years to any private developer. And I really can't explain that any further, except we have done a poor job in public-private partnerships. There are a variety of reasons why they're really not governmental in nature, and we should stick to our specialty, which is government. So I am kind of in a conservative in the government role, and I would not support, and I think there is great financial risk in supporting a shop complex down at the north end. If you look at the plan and you look at the numbers they've already presented on the farmers market, the four-season market. It's not a farmers market. It's called a four-season market, multi-purpose market. They've already said we will not ever make a dime on it, and we will probably have to pay for at least half of it. So, from my perspective, it's the wrong thing to put in for our city. We can't afford it, and besides that, it's not governmental in nature.
Bob?
Well, I'd like to bring it back to the actual question, which was, should we have permanent public access, and what would that look like? And I think that if we do want permanent public access, we want relatively open. We want that public access to have more to it than just the open space. And the specifics of any one plan, I think it's more a question of how does it fit into how we think the waterfront should function for our citizens, for our visitors. And so I would support having the permanent public access, walking access, but also the, not unlike what we had with Chinook Pier, not unlike what we've had with previous projects, things which are more commercial and more like eating establishments and such, for people to do for fun.
All right, thank you. And we're out of time, and we're going to move on to our Board of Light and Power. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and we'll be back. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
I would move it up so it's closer to them. There,
You don't need microphones.
I do. So that way it's I'm saying it's longer, so we need to get two more.
Jerry? I think they're gonna have to share one each, so yeah, so we'll come over between them. Well, what we're gonna do here is this belongs to the League of Women.
Now I'm gonna mess with those leaves.
Probably is. You want to turn me down? Which part is it? I don't know. Feel? Can I have the index cards?
Sure, that's good.
And I got a question for you. Okay.
The other thing we need to do is, I am going to write down a sequence of letters. Well, D. So we're going to ask them.
I can't. I don't.
What we're going to do, because we can't have them pick a star.
Okay.
So I'm going to, whoever picks,
Because that's what gets confusing as to who I go to next. That's where I'm going to get really confused. Okay, well, if you want to handle that, that would be great.
Mike, can you hear me?
I mean, whatever you think. I mean, yeah.
Hey, Nick, can Mike hear me? Can Mike hear? The microphone is muted. The top one. Mike, can you hear?
Where would the sound be coming from?
Where would the? Just turn it off. He's typing to us.
Mike, can you hear?
Okay. Okay. So Jerry's Mike, you can hear, correct?
Mike, can you hear? Can you hear, Mike?
Okay.
We can't hear him.
That's right. So, what we need you to do, because Mike can't pick a straw.
Okay.
So we've got 4 letters. Jerry, since you're the former mayor, A, B, C, or D? What? B. B, okay. So, all right, Andrea? A. Andy? D? That means you get C, Mike. So, first person is C, which is going to be Andy. Second person is going to be Andrea.
I'm D.
You're what? You picked D. Okay, Mike is first. Andrea picked A.
Would you like us like this order?
Yeah, we got to set. I don't.
Mike 2.
And then. What did you pick? B. B. You're third. And,
This way?
I guess Andrea's fourth. Yeah, whatever.
I know what right not to bother me to bother you.
I don't know how you feel about the germs, but the mic can be handed back and forth. There's no reason it has to stay in those pedestals.
No, in fact, that's awesome. So I think we should, the last time we did it, we just passed it.
When y'all talk into the microphone, you gotta talk right into it,
Oh,
right
we're
into
gonna
the
pick it
top.
up.
Yeah, they can
It's
just pick it up.
terrible, you can't hear it. It's a waste of everybody's time.
We can hear plenty back there.
Yeah, you want to drop me down.
Testing. Plenty. Sibilance.
Are you sad to be home, Andy? You guys look like you had a good time out there. Are you happy to be home, or you wish you stayed longer?
3 weeks was good.
Yeah. We're doing I'm doing Charleston for Thanksgiving with the kids. I got like a really nice house. We're gonna do some history, hopefully see some dolphins, but it's time. We just need a vacation.
The historic tour. That's even for your age kids. But be ready for the slavery side of it.
Well, that's kind of why I want to bring them, because I want them to think about that.
Because there's some narrative and signage. It's like,
it's still really inappropriate.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
But we were.
Yeah, Denny's. He's just not feeling it.
Avenue for slavery. Most of it went to South America.
Yeah.
Caribbean.
Yeah.
Like 15 million people.
That's insane. Well, they have one of the attractions is actually one of the slave trading. Like,
It's stuck inside. There's another one, isn't it? You got Andy over there?
Andy. Where were they to begin with?
They were in this.
Yeah, just do that.
Different questions.
Just don't choose any questions I don't want, okay? Can we just turn Bob's inside out and use a Sharpie?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Well, we have Reagan's crayons. You can have Reagan do it in colorful. She might have black in there. Make it work. Andy doesn't have one. I'm sure it's here. It's just a question of where. How's Europe?
I'm your official flasher. That is my official designation.
I can't.
Well, you're he's the real
Take
flasher.
a number.
Right.
Does that mean if they don't listen to our stuff, we get him to flash them?
That's right. If you don't abide by
Can you hear us?
he will flash.
Kind of like that.
They can't hear you.
I'm Mrs. O'Neill,
I'm sure they'll have it figured
the
out.
older, uglier version.
We could sign language.
I apologize. We stand from the League of Voters and we have yours.
It could be a message.
No, I don't think so.
I know. Well, I thought it was like some cool, like modern.
I didn't get the email, Andy, so you don't feel too
And then I
sorry.
realized it's background.
Can we ask that everyone take their seat, please? And there's plenty of refreshments. There's candy, there's cookies, there's even apples. And coffee and water. All right, I'm going to introduce the candidates for the Board of Light and Power. We'll start with Andy Coffin. For the past 7 years, Andy has followed and participated in all public forums, BLP board and city council meetings, both on decommissioning the Sims plant and on the future energy plans for Grand Haven. He has also independently studied the electrical power marketplace, including available and developing technologies in order to make informed decisions regarding local power. He follows the organizations that affect local power, including the Michigan Public Power Agency, Power Purchasing, the Michigan Municipal Electric Association, he's a lobbyist for Michigan Municipal Power Companies, and MISO, the distributed operator of the grid, as well as agencies that regulate what the BLP plans and how it operates, such as MI Eagle and US EPA. Andy Coffin has been a Grand Haven resident for 20 plus years, is a life member of the Sierra Club, and has volunteered extensively with the Main Street DDA for 11 years, the Coast Guard Festival for 13, as a member of the Musical Fountain Committee for 9 years, and with Grand Haven Public Schools for 4 years. Andy states, I listen, I read, I research, and above all, I intend to represent BLP ratepayers. Now we move on to Andrea Hendrick. She graduated from Grand Valley State University with a bachelor's degree in geography and a certificate in sustainable urban and regional planning and geographic information system technology. She's worked in municipal planning departments throughout West Michigan and in the nonprofit and private sectors with a focus on low-income housing and development in highly regulated industries. She is now the principal planner for her own planning and GIS firm. Andrea has 4 children and has lived her entire adult life in Grand Haven. She believes that their future depends on a strong economy, a clean environment, and opportunities that come from citizens driving the decisions of their government. Mike Westbrook is on Zoom, is the Director of Environmental Health, Safety, and Sustainability at Shape Corporation in Grand Haven. Mike has a Bachelor of Science degree in Industrial and Environmental Health Management from Ferris State University. He has 24 years of experience in sustainable business, occupational health and safety, and environmental compliance in chemical, food, and automotive industries. Mike is the Acting Corporate Compliance Officer for Shape, overseeing company compliance and business ethics. He currently serves as a member of the Grand Haven City Planning Commission. And I'm trying to find Jerry. There we are, right there. I've gotcha. And last but not least, Jerry Mccaleb. Jerry was born in the Netherlands. Most of her growing up years were in Grand Haven Township with the Rosie Mound Natural Area as her backyard. She graduated from Grand Haven High School and Grand Valley State University. At Grand Valley, she took introductory courses in geology and was so fascinated by the process that formed and maintained the earth, she decided to major in earth science and minor in history. Jerry has been married to John Mccaleb for almost 40 years. They have 2 children and 3 grandchildren. After her kids were born, she was a stay-at-home mom, homeschooling, and working part-time in various fields, including a photography studio, and started her own sewing business. Jerry has a lifelong interest in politics and was elected to 8 years on Grand Haven City Council after a 2-year break, then served 8 years as Grand Haven mayor. Many years with the city familiarized Jerry with the workings of the Board of Light and Power. In the last 2 years as mayor, she's worked through the closing of the Sims 3 plant. At that time, the city council wanted to see some production and needed heat for the city snowmelt system, but that plan has been abandoned, and they're receiving all their energy for the ratepayers from the grid. We will now move to the questions. And make sure you keep an eye on our timekeepers up front, please. And Michael, the first question is for you on Zoom. And this is courtesy of Grand Haven Lakeshore Chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby. The UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reports that the world is warming faster than previously thought, and we need to make drastic changes to reduce fossil fuels emissions. Do you know BLP's current position on renewables? As a BLP trustee, what strategies, if any, would you implement to reduce fossil fuel emissions? And that's for you, Michael? I don't believe he can hear us.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, were you able to hear that question, Michael? We can't hear him and he can't hear us, so.
This is the concern. We're not hearing anything come out of this. Is this
I think he accidentally muted the mic, or somebody muted the microphone.
I unmuted him.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I unmuted his sound. And now you can hear me?
Okay, we can't hear you
We
though.
can't hear you. Does your thing say that you're muted? It's always a fun game. Do you have cell phone service? If you have cell phone service, call my cell phone. Type in here. Or WhatsApp me. Do you have WhatsApp? Come on, Mike. Who doesn't have WhatsApp?
I don't have WhatsApp.
You're under 50.
No, I'm not.
Hey now.
Switch out of your earbuds and see if. No. Then test the call.
You know, when my microphone doesn't work, I have to shut
So
my
we did
computer
test
down
all of this
and set it.
beforehand, so we're not sure why it's not working right now.
Worked fine.
Yeah, it worked fine earlier, so just so you know.
What if it's the volume on the computer? Alright. And you don't have any service on your phone? Because you can call me and I can put my Facebook. Do you have Facebook on there? Try to call me on Facebook.
Maybe on his end, actually.
You might have better international service with Facebook.
Yes, we're gonna have to tell him he's out of time.
Oh, yeah. You get the time. Oh, okay. All right.
Yes.
You can't.
We might be able to. Hold on.
Sorry about this.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got you.
Everything's good on my end. I'm not sure what's going on.
We do need to turn off the sound there, though. Turn off his. So turn off his input from our sound. This is not our first rodeo in ragtagging. Okay. Now try.
Can you hear me?
Yay! All right, I will read the question again, okay?
Oh, okay. Let me take my earbuds out here so we're,
All right,
okay, go ahead.
And you can hear me, okay. The UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reports that the world is warming faster than previously thought, and we need to make drastic changes to reduce fossil fuel emissions. Do you know BLP's current position on renewables? As a BLP trustee, what strategies, if any, would you implement to reduce fossil fuel emissions?
Okay, great. You can still hear me, just checking.
Yes.
All right, great. BLP has a renewable energy portfolio and goals to hit renewables, which is awesome. It's fantastic. So the first question was, do I know BLP's current position? They're targeting 25% by 2023, which is fantastic, and I know that they're looking at expanding that further, and I fully support that. I've said it a million times, renewable energies conserve natural resources, reduce carbon emissions, and are desirable whenever we can use them. Affordability has been an issue in the past with renewables, but it's super cool to see that they're becoming more affordable. And I was looking at project plans for the company I work at today with renewables, and the return on investment time has shrunk drastically from years past. So pretty excited about that. I am speaking in a forum for the Lakeshore Sustainability Group that Andrea will be speaking at next too about sustainability plan. And, citywide sustainability plan would be an excellent, I think, for Grand Haven. I'd support the BLP being part of that planning process. And considering things like Holland's Home Energy Project, that was another question of ours, is ways to further reduce the carbon footprint of the city.
All right, thank you. Andrea, do you want me to read the question again, or are you?
I'm next. Okay, yeah.
Yes, you are next.
Actually, I have it here. It's okay.
Okay.
The Board of Light and Power. Oh, now what? Hold on. Hold, please. The Board of Light and Power does have some sustainability goals, but I think that if you look at what's happening in the market, the sustainability goals that are set from the Board of Light and Power are kind of subpar compared to what the market is already driving, and I think we can do better. And I think that's how we get in a situation where we're ready to put a fossil fuel plant on a flooded, contaminated island and assume that that was the best solution. I think that if we're going to keep moving forward, if you don't have a goal, if you aim at nothing, you're going to hit it every time. So we've got to be thinking about forward plans. We're going to hit those energy goals or those sustainability goals, no problem, because the market is driving that, because the MPPA is making deals all the time for new solar. This is not this crazy off the wall forward thinking so far down the road issue. This is what's happening, and it's happening very, very quickly. At the 9/16 Board of Light and Power meeting, the general manager was strongly opposed to federal policy focused on infrastructure improvements and renewable energy goals. He said they were too aggressive. They would pass unneeded costs, and they would have to pass unneeded costs onto the ratepayers, and they were all pushed through too quickly, which to me was a little bit surprising when that is exactly what the community was trying to say about this fossil fuel plant on Harbor Island. So I think that we've got to meet in the middle here. We've got to listen to each other, but we've got to be very realistic about the way that energy and technology is moving, and it's happening fast.
Jerry.
Well, I'm going to start out by taking issue with the first sentence, that the world is warming faster than previously thought, and we need to make drastic changes. I'm not sure it's moving as fast as originally thought. As a matter of fact, over the years, I've lived through a variety of ups and downs in temperature and predictions. And I remember when I was a student at Grand Valley, we were looking at a global cooling scare rather than a global warming scare. And so these things are, depending on where you get your numbers from and where your thermometers are placed, and what your agenda is as to where you see all this going, and whether it's man-made or not man-made. The Earth has always been in a flux. The Earth has always been moving up and down in temperature. That's why the places where deserts used to be seas and where seas used to be deserts. So all of this is in flux. So the BLP has closed the coal burning plant, has closed the Sims plant, and has invested heavily in renewables. And I think they've taken those steps to move away from fossil fuels. And I think they're in a very positive mode in order to do that. You still have to balance your renewables with those reliable natural gas sources. And I think that they have to maintain a balance between what those things are, what those fuels are that are going to give you consistent power, and where the renewables are often, it depends on the time of day or whether the wind is blowing or not blowing. So you have to back up those things that are not quite as reliable on a 24/7 basis with those things that are. So I think actually the BLP is doing a good job.
Andy.
Thank you. To echo a point that Mike made earlier, the current position of the BLP on renewables is 25% by 2023. Their goal, reinforced by contracts they've issued, is 29% by 2024. And if you use the contract vehicle and tactic to improve and increase the percent of renewables that BLP delivers to its customers, we can easily exceed state minimum requirements by using the 5-year contracts interleaved to buy different renewable energy from different sources. To Jerry's point about dispatchable power complementing renewables, which are somewhat less dispatchable, there are local projects involving biodigesters that use methane as the fuel source. There's a big one going on in Coopersville, there's another in Newaygo, and there is rumor to be substantiated that Holland would be considering a biodigester plant as well. So between local biodigesters and region-wide renewable contracts, we could move not to 100% renewable, but very close to that in the short term. And so my strategy with the BLP would be keep the contracts moving, keep the percentage of renewables increasing, and buy local, if we can, dispatchable power.
Thank you, Andy. This is an opportunity for all four of you to discuss your answers if you'd like. Obviously, you do not all agree. Anyone? Okay.
Mike is making a comment.
Yes, Mike.
Gotcha. Hold on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Sorry, I'm having a struggle with the phone tonight. Jerry, they call it climate change. It's not global warming. It's not cooling. It's climate change. It's by definition. I think that when we're talking about renewables, I don't see how anybody could be anti-renewable. This seems like a topic if you can get it affordable and reliable, everybody should get on board with, in my opinion, regardless of how we feel about cooling or warming. I mean, it just seems to be a positive thing for the community. Lower pollution, uses less natural resources. So I disagree with you slightly there, Jerry.
Well, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I wasn't taking issue with you. I was taking issue with the wording of the question, saying that warming is faster and that we need to make drastic changes. I think drastic is a little bit of a dramatic word, and I don't have an issue with renewables. What I have an issue with is that they need backup with reliable sources. So the more reliable the renewables become, the better off and more confidence I have in them. They still are subsidized heavily, so it's still a balance game to say I'm opposed, that is a misstatement. But I do believe in balance, and I believe in meeting all of our needs, and however it takes to meet those needs.
Anyone else want to chime in? All right, we'll move on to the next question. This is for you, Andy. No, all of you, but we'll start with Andy. Andy, what do you believe should be done with Harbor Island?
First off, does that sound okay? Mm-hmm. So first off, we're waiting for results from the more extensive sampling wells that Eagle and EPA have asked and put onto Harbor Island. So until Eagle and EPA come back with a determination of acceptable use, we need to wait for that. Once we have the acceptable use or permitted uses, then we should probably have a consultant to help us with how do we remediate the island to that use. And we already have Golder under contract for some of this work. Holland used a firm called HDR based in Omaha for their sustainability plan. They might be another resource. But either way, we would have to come up with a plan to bring the island to an Eagle and EPA acceptable use. Then, to echo Mayor Menez's point, we'd have to look for funding, since almost any acceptable use is going to be beyond the physical capability of the city of Grand Haven or BLP. So if we are a brownfield, could we get brownfield grants? Could we get something from the feds, the state, or otherwise to help achieve an acceptable use?
Thank you, Andy. Michael, what do you believe should be done with Harbor Island?
Well, right now I can tell you the BLP has communicated they have no plans to build anything on the island for a couple of years, and I fully support that. With the remediation that's going on, I think that's the priority right now. I said before that the island is currently mapped, and our future land use map is industrial, and I'm not sure that that's what the community wants. Does the community want to see light industrial or heavy industrial built on the island? From what I hear from people, they don't. If I personally got to decide what was out there, and I don't personally get to choose, but I'd like to see it a natural open area, natural space, like the rest of Harbor Island. Maybe not a soccer field, but a nice space for people to enjoy, and get with the remediation, get it cleaned up to a point where we could make it open and natural, and citizens could enjoy a natural space on the river. I am a planning commission member. I asked for this to be on the agenda for planning. I feel like right now we're updating our 5-year City of Grand Haven planning master plan. The timing's perfect. That planning process should include Harbor Island. We should have public input on what should happen on our Harbor Island. This is an important part of our city, and I feel our citizens have the right to say what goes out on the island and its planned future use.
Andrea, what do you believe should be done with Harbor Island?
The community should decide. That's always been the argument. I've beat this drum so much that the drum is falling apart. The community should decide what happens there. Yes, we have some factors regarding environmental contamination that's complicated, and we need to have a real conversation about how we're going to move forward with cleaning that. We don't know what we can do yet, and we don't know, once we have a plan, how extensive that plan is. But I think that if we do the right thing and we get together, and if our city council and our board of light and power work together, and if we engage the same citizens that have been speaking about this project for over a year and a half, over 2 years, saying we want to say, and we start looking at some of the foundations that have been actively involved in this community and have changed, the urban landscape of our city before, I have no reason to believe that they wouldn't step up and do the same thing there. We should be talking about federal and state funding, these PFAS, park infrastructure. These are all things that there's going to be plenty of money, and we need to make sure that we have a good relationship with the state and federal government on this. I think first step is community sustainability plan. I personally think that there should be continuous access to waterfront in this beautiful waterfront town. After we have a community sustainability plan that actually looks at what we already have, where we need to go to change things to make sure that we have a sustainable, not just but like from a triple bottom line sustainable aspect that looks at the economics, the environment, and the social aspect of development or lack of development, then we can start talking about the master plan. Mr. Westbrook was absolutely right. We have the opportunity as a community to rezone an area or to change the future land use of that map from industrial to some kind of public use. I think that's appropriate. Thank you.
Jerry Mccaleb, what do you believe should be done with Harbor Island?
Well, before you can decide what to do with Harbor Island, you have to answer a whole lot of questions as to what's there, what are these 30 wells that are out there going to tell you about what's there. And then when you know what's there, you can move a plan forward as to what you want to do with it after you decide, there's levels of development as there are levels of contamination. And so you have to decide what it is you want to do with it, and, taking into account the levels of contamination or the levels of, how do you put in, can you put in barriers? Can you contain what's in there? What do you really want to do there? You want to leave it a natural sanctuary, natural wildlife sanctuary, which I think would be, to me, would be favorable, because there's a lot of people that just like to hike or take pictures. There's a lot of wildlife. There's a lot of exotic birds that move through here. Exotic for us, anyway. So what should be done? This is it's a community involvement as to what you want to see. What do you want to, how do you want to enjoy it? How many, should it be developed? That's, again, what is your level of development? What is your level of contamination? And what is it going to cost? The city has a lot of projects underway. It has a lot of infrastructure that still needs to be done. How do you prioritize the work that you want to do with Harbor Island with all the other things that the city of Grand Haven needs to do to take care of its community with the budget and the taxing as far as how we're dealing with our citizens? There's so many things that need to be taken care of. So you have to put it on a priority list as to what needs to be done for the citizens in Grand Haven, and what would they like to do with this piece of property. Do you want to invest a lot of money in it, or do you want to leave it more natural and have it be in a recreational space?
All right, thank you. This is an opportunity for you guys to chime in, and if you'd like to, we encourage you to do that, please. No? Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. magic bag. Jerry Mccaleb. Recent testing discovered PFAS and other dangerous chemicals on Harbor Island in addition to the long-time coal ash contamination. What would be your plan for resolving this serious problem? This question comes from the Michigan chapter of the Sierra Club.
Well, this relates back to the previous question of what would you have done with Harbor Island. I think a lot of the same things I would say to that question as to this question. Is how do you first of all, find out what's there. What are these 30 wells going to tell you as to what's there and what the level of it is? Then, what do the experts tell you how to contain it, or, how to treat it, what to do with it? And then you look at what you can afford and what are the possibilities of what you're going to build on that in order to, at what level that you have to decontaminate. So it's very hard to answer a question when you don't know the details that you haven't discovered yet. So a lot of this has to do with things that we need to know, that we need to learn before we can actually move a plan forward. What would my plan for being the serious problem is first you have to find out the facts, and then you have to lay out a plan as to how to deal with it. And a big part of that plan is cost. What is it going to cost you? And how does that figure into the other responsibilities that you have to the greater community of Grand Haven, rather than to put all your focus on Harbor Island? And I'll relinquish the rest of my time.
All right, thank you. Andy?
Echoing Jerry's sentiments, it relates to the previous question, but first we have to determine.
Put the mic just a little bit closer to your mouth. There you go. Thank you kindly.
We need to determine what's there. The 30 test wells that are on the island now will tell us, to a degree, what's there. The second thing to determine is the material that's there moving? Which way is the groundwater flowing? And is it getting into the Grand River? And does the flow change with differing water levels? You would expect that it would. So low water, high water could change the direction of groundwater flow. The EPA and EGLE will tell us what is there and whether it's moving. They will say what an acceptable use could be. It's up to the city to come back with a plan and say, this is what we want to do. The simplest is a cap. Don't do anything to the island at all. Cover it with clay, put some grass on it, call it good. But then there's a cost. So how much would that cost to do that? The idea of developing any significant infrastructure on the island would seem to be not a good idea at this time. And again, until we know more, until we have more months of test results from those sampling wells, we really don't know what the options are.
Michael?
Yeah, I agree with the other two speakers. Part of environmental remediation project is understanding the scope of the contamination. We've just grazed the surface. We know there's PFAS out there from the trash. We know that there's arsenic out there in the coal impoundments and the clay. So I think we've got to develop a plan to, kind of clean all that up. As far as BLP liability, and we're BLP trustees, we talk about funding. The BLP has money, the cash reserves, $12.5 million to fund cleanup of the coal impoundment, arsenic, and the clay lining. I think the PFAS contamination is a much larger issue, and it's going to be a longer-term cleanup effort, and frankly, a larger time-consuming study just understand the scope of the contamination. I can tell you, I sat in on one of the BLP board meetings. They talked about digging and possibly compromising drinking water by digging or mining the land. And we've got to really make sure that we're taking the proper steps to protect the health and safety of the community and visitors. So, and we've got good advisors with our engineers and Eagle to help us make those decisions.
Andrea.
I think one of the main things that's happened during this process, and this is something that I've been very involved in, just asking the Board of Light and Power, what is happening? What are you doing? Who are you talking to at Eagle? What are they saying? What are you asking? And there has been a little bit of obfuscating that's been going on. And I can tell you that I personally had to FOIA the Board of Light and Power, and they wanted to charge me thousands of dollars to get information on the amount of contamination and what contaminants were in the water. And I had to have a local lawyer challenge that FOIA. So I'm not going to sit here and act like everything's been hunky-dory and the Board of Light and Power has been playing nice and being transparent with the community. I'm not trying to mudsling, but I'm going to be honest that if I'm on that board, I'm going to ask the other trustees to stand with me in changing things so that we are transparent and we are protecting our community from harmful contaminants that may potentially be affecting their health. There was a statement, Mayor Manetza said, the Eagle doesn't really tell you what to do. You come up with a plan and then they say yes or no. That's kind of true, but we've been spending hundreds of thousands of dollars asking Golder and an environmental attorney to tell us what to do. And the roadmap is actually in the state laws regarding contamination. So the roadmap is you can do whatever you want as long as you play within the bounds of these laws. So when you hire a consulting firm, an environmental engineer, and this amazing environmental lawyer in our, one of the best in our state that helped to write the regulation, and they come and ask for a mixing zone when you know that a mixing zone isn't allowed if we have PFAS or if we have some of these other chemicals that are found, and we spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars for them to give plans that are never supposed to be approved, and then they go and ask, hey, Governor,
your time is up.
Please give us exceptions. That can't keep happening.
All right, this is an opportunity. You agree on some things and you disagree on other things to talk amongst yourselves. We encourage you to do that. Does anybody have anything to say to the other candidates? I believe we have time for another question. Andrea, would you support municipal policies that would encourage the purchase and use of electric vehicles, including with municipal fleets, and the build-out of charging station infrastructure in Grand Haven? This comes from the Michigan League of Conservation Voters.
Yeah, this is a question that I feel like is a lot more related to City Council's decisions as far as policy, and this is something that the Board of Light and Power would have to kind of support, because it is a policy decision that I don't think that the Board of Light and Power has the purview to actually do anything about. But I most certainly want to be a board that encourages our other elected officials and communicates with them well so that we're making decisions not based on, that are collaborative decisions. So I think the idea of having municipal fleets, that's kind of the buzz in EVs, is that you actually can be alive. They're not affordable right now, but if you buy a fleet, it actually, if you buy a bunch of these, there's economy and scale. So if it's done well and you buy enough, there's a lot more value in buying something that the technology is technically more expensive than an internal combustion engine right now. So I most certainly do encourage that. As for charging stations, I hope the federal government will standardize EV hookups. I think that's going to be a huge thing. And again, these are out of my ability to change, but one of the ways that we're going to become effective with good infrastructure is if we don't have a Tesla hookup here and then 12 miles down the road is the next hookup. We need standardized hookups, and that's a federal thing that has to happen. Another thing that the City Council or the Planning Commission could explore is incentivizing. Maybe there's something you want in development, and if they choose to include an electric vehicle hookup, you give them another height or parking, decrease in parking. There's some benefits that you can do with a zoning ordinance to help with that.
Jerry.
would not be a fan of this, actually, myself, mostly because it's a cost issue. You're going to, between the BLP and the city of Grand Haven, because if it says, you're talking about including municipal fleets, that is a huge investment. When you look at some of the trucks that Public Works buys, they're $100,000. And they're very specialized, and you just don't replace those on a whim. You just don't want to, just to say that you have electric vehicles. And the same thing, well, you don't just have to have electric vehicles, you have to have the infrastructure for the electric vehicle. And that electric vehicle has to be maintained, and you have to, there's so much, it's easy to say, well, let's use electric vehicles, but there's a whole infrastructure that goes with them. And again, you have a city budget. You have a small number, you have 10,000 people in your city, and they have to try to support all of this. And I think that is, it's unrealistic. And when I heard this a while ago saying that, well, everybody's going to be driving, it's about 5 years ago, everybody's going to be driving electric cars in 5 years. I don't see myself doing that. For one thing, the infrastructure isn't there to maintain it. I think it impinges on my freedom to be able to drive as far as I want. I mean, I can go get a tank of gas and move on, rather than having to charge my car somewhere for however long that's going to take, and where those charging stations are. So I think this is unrealistic, and the answer is no, I don't.
Thank you. Andy?
Thank you. I do support the city and BLP acquiring electric vehicles, but let's look at the finances of it first. To Mayor Mccaleb's point, some of the vehicles in use, like the fire engines, some of the specialty things with Public Works and BLP, are very expensive vehicles. They are probably not fully depreciated, and probably depreciate over 5 to 10 year useful lives. So could we plan on the depreciation schedule that exists to replace them with, at worst, hybrid vehicles lacking an EV infrastructure in the city as a bridge to an electric vehicle fleet? If you look at metro fleets, for example, in Las Vegas, 30 years ago, they converted taxis and public vehicles to propane from gasoline and lowered their air pollution by quite a bit. And that was very advantageous for them. In planning, BLP could start putting together infrastructure for EVs in town, and like a gas station, charge for the electricity. Could we build out our infrastructure and slowly replace the fleets as the depreciation comes due? I think we can do that.
Michael?
Yeah, I agree with the other candidates. I think changing the municipal fleets to EVs is a ways off. They're expensive, and maybe, I think we just got some new fleets, so it's probably not practical in the interim. But the reality is, I work in the auto industry, and this is where the auto industry is going. GM announced that they're going to be all electrical vehicle manufacturing by 2035, and that's not that far off. I think that there's going to be a day in the near future where it's going to be hard to find a gas engine vehicle. Other automakers have done similar announcements, and this movement's happening. I think it's interesting. I think the cars are cool. I agree with Andrea. I don't know that the BLP is the right owner of the initiative to put charging stations in the city of Grand Haven, but it's certainly kind of in their wheelhouse, and it could be a good partnership with the city. I talked to a business the other day in Grand Haven, an electrical company, that actually is installing right now charging stations for customers. They've got a business model: come charge your car, for free, and the businesses pay for it. and to draw people in, because you're going to see more and more EV vehicles on the road in the very, very near future. Very cool one. The Rivian truck. We're making Hummer EV truck battery trays here in Grand Haven for launch very soon. So I think this movement's happening. I think it's something we have to talk about. And, you know, to stay forward thinking, we have to be thinking about within the city, where are we going to have these charging stations? And is it a strategic advantage to have them to bring business in? I think that the things that just have to be on all of our minds. And I'm excited about it, frankly.
All right, and your time is up. Would any of you like to add anything to that?
I would. Kudos to BLP. I don't know if you've noticed. I believe 3 of the new line trucks they have are hybrid, which is a half step, but it's a step. But those trucks will be with us for probably 15 years before we get to a full EV. But it's there. They're trying. The city could follow suit.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I do want to mention, if you're talking about sustainability, the most sustainable thing is not to take a working vehicle and trash it and replace it with something just because the next technology is there. You use your goods until they're done. I mean, I look at my junky little washer that's somewhat inefficient, but know that that piece of metal, you know, is there's labor that goes into creating that metal and extracting that metal. So when we're looking at the full-scale sustainability, I don't think anybody's asking to take something that's functioning, throw it away, and replace it with something that's a little bit more efficient.
Jerry?
I take exception to and it may be true that this is what car companies are making, but it's like, well, we're going to tell you what you want to, what you're going to get. It's no longer, this is what my choice is. No, this is what we're making, and this is what you're going to take. And I think that should be everybody's decision. It's kind of like all of a sudden everybody was selling glass top stoves. Glass top stoves are horrible, but it was all that you could find for a while, and now there's more variety. So I believe in choice, and I believe that if I wanted to get an internal combustion engine, I should be able to buy one. I shouldn't be forced to buy an electric car if I didn't want one. It's kind of like, you know, what do you want? That's what America's all about. It's all about variety and choice. And I think the cars ought to be the same as all the other stuff. So.
Anyone else?
I think America will speak on that one, and we'll see if, just like the typewriter, we might not need it, and you might not have a market to be selling typewriters when computers and smartphones are around.
All right, that wraps up our forum with the Board of Light and Power. We'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll move on to City Council. Thank you, candidates, very much. And thanks, Mike, for coming on Zoom.
We were living on the edge. My phone is almost dead. That's what we had to do last time. I know, it's a pain in the butt.
Thank you. I was saying, I recognize that noise when I got your phone charger.
Oh, good.
Yeah. You need to plug it in? Okay.
Yeah, I might as well.
I can't take it. Oh, look. I love this. Never. All right, are you sure? Because I feel horrible, but my husband's sorry. It's almost like
Here. And you want to sit next to this bald guy?
I do. I always have to sit next to him.
Yes, so that way we can plan. What?
Yeah.
And so
We're doing good.
I was only writing for minutes, so I have to go, but I thought you could even like dip it out before your swan song here. You're gonna do great. I feel terrible, but I have to get her by 9.
All right, I'll see you. Nice seeing you, though.
Disappointing because we had it working.
I know, but you know what?
So you guys get to pick
You get to pick a straw to see who gets to go first.
You can take that. Can I take it now? Yeah. Okay. Are you leaving? Well, I'm going to leave sometime during this because I got to get to my dog. I'll go take it now. Yeah, take it now. Okay. You got my phone. I'll put it up in the yard tomorrow. 209 South Street. All right. Thanks. Okay. Thank you. I got it.
So Karen's gone away. Mike isn't here, so you can't pick your straw yet.
Well, let me pick 3. Hey.
I have to go pick up my daughter.
I know.
But
Kristen just told me.
remember, you have the right to use a horse and carriage if you want, okay?
Okay. I'll see you, Gary.
Yeah, as soon as it started, just this one on the top.
Yeah, Mike, can you hear it all? We don't know what happened there. Yeah?
He can hear us. We can't hear him.
We're trying to figure out what went wrong and why we had to use the cell phone and call it. We got it all set up ready to go.
Okay, so he just wants to stay and listen?
Yeah, he's going to stay.
Okay. You want to...
Yeah, I think it's a little better view of the table.
No, he's right here. You have to come over here and wave.
Good job.
Good luck. Go get him. Thank you, sir. You're welcome. Hello, sir.
Take that final comment that you have, both of you. Take the final comment and say something about your campaign, not just relating to environmental stuff. Just, I think you have the opportunity. Might as well use it. So you guys get to pick toothpicks.
Oh.
And now, do we agree that the longest one gets to be first?
Yes, we do.
Do you agree with that?
I'm perfectly fine with that.
All right. Well, Mike.
And medium is
All right,
second.
So
and
should we,
shortest
now,
is
so
third.
who would like to? Should we do it in alphabetical order?
Well, I think ladies should go first, unless you don't want to.
All right, I'll go first.
All right.
I wouldn't know if that's the long one or the short one.
So Mike, you're first.
You're first?
Yep.
All right.
Yep. So you're first.
You don't need
Karen.
these at...
No, you can have those if you like as souvenirs.
But if we ran a sword banner, you would win.
Hey, well,
not
necessarily.
talk
into
the mic. Talk right into the top.
Oh, we know. We are good at this.
Okay, all right.
We are all pros
All
at
right,
this,
we're
aren't we,
gonna
Michael?
share, I guess, and you can take them out of the thing if you need to.
Yes.
That's no problem.
What is this? Is this a microphone
This
too?
one's for...
Oh, I got it. Are you gonna share that? You gonna share that one?
Yeah, we're gonna try.
So I get that? I get my own?
Speak loudly. I might kind of go back and forth. I don't know.
Okay, well, you know, if you get mad at Mike, move over here.
Yeah. Okay. It depends on how he answers the question.
Would you like to read them? I know you kind of like I am, Mike. I don't know why I put answers down further, because when they ask the question, then I just go off on... Well, I know, you and me both. We can only do what we can do, Michael.
That's the truth. Okay, so just FYI, I'm going to put the timer and the card flasher. So
What does that mean?
it means after a minute, I show the first card that says 1 minute.
Oh, okay.
And at the end of 2 minutes, I show that.
We'd like everyone to take their seats if they could, please.
And then when you guys do the interplay, you got
There's refreshments, there's cookies, there's candy, there's energy bars, and there's apples.
Michael, how long did you study for this? It was like taking a final exam.
All right, now we're going to introduce our candidates for City Council. Mike Dora is a second-generation, lifetime and year-round City of Grand Haven resident. He has 44 years of manufacturing experience, including general labor, supervision, material control, distribution, maintenance, and working with Myosha and Eagle on safety and environmental issues. And a past member, vice chair, and chair of the Planning Commission. He's passionate about Grand Haven and preserving our small town charm, atmosphere, natural beauty, parks, and green spaces. Mike is civically involved and attends many board and commission meetings, as well as participating in the affordable housing infrastructure and beyond the peer committees. As a council member, Mike has demonstrated a track record of reaching out for your input and representing your voice. He believes it's important to remain open to all conversation and have a personal opinion and driving a personal agenda instead of offering solutions to our issues. It's not representing you, the voter, he says. And now we move on to Karen Lowe, candidate for City Council. Karen holds a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Illinois and MBA from Washington University in St. Louis. Recently retired, she's a former partner with PricewaterhouseCoopers, a Big Four accounting and consulting and professional services firm, and is a retired vice president and general manager with IBM, where she ran the division that served IBM's retail clients globally. As a candidate for City Council member, Karen brings more than 25 years of financial management and consulting experience in the areas of strategy, organizational effectiveness, process improvement, risk management, and technology implementation. Since her retirement, Karen has served our community in ways that reflect her love of history and her love of Grand Haven. She's an amateur historian who self-published her first book on one of Grand Haven's historic districts in 2019 and previously served as commissioner on the City of Grand Haven's Historic Conservation District Commission. And lastly, Kevin Mclaughlin. Kevin and Elizabeth moved to the Grand Haven area vacationing from upstate New York for a number of years. They have a blended family of 4 adult children and 4 grandchildren. Kevin spent his professional career in Binghamton, New York after graduating from St. Austin's College in Urban Studies. Kevin worked for the city of Binghamton for over 17 years. He began in the planning department, moving to administrating the Community Development Block Grant Program, and finally is head of the city's Economic Development Department. During those years, a project he takes great pride in, being the lead for the financing, design, and construction of the AA Stadium for the New York Mets. He then worked in the private sector in healthcare and construction, gaining a new respect to those with the boots on the ground. He went on to work for a nonprofit entitled the National Development Council. During that time, he advised municipalities and industrial development agencies throughout New York and Pennsylvania. He also taught economic and housing courses to practitioners across the country. Kevin found an opportunity to work for the state of New York, where he was regional director for an 8-county region under the Empire State Development Corporation. Simultaneously, he volunteered and was president of the Empire State New Market Corporation. Kevin routinely dealt with local, state, and federal agencies, political officials, community leaders, lending institutions, investment bankers, private developers, and neighborhood-based organizations. Kevin believes that his 45 years as a leader and administrator in public, private, and not-for-profit sectors makes him uniquely qualified to be a member of the Grand Haven City Council. Do we know who goes first? I can't. Just can you say Mike? Okay. And then who's second? I don't have.
Karen.
Karen.
This order right here.
Right down the row.
Thank you. All right. Mike, Would you support restoring Harbor Island to a natural state for public recreation? This question is from the Wetlands Watch.
Yes, I would. But the difficult thing is what is possible for Harbor Island in the future remains to be seen yet. There's a big steps that we have to go through working with Eagle and the EPA to come to a determination of what will be allowed. We put some new monitoring wells out there, but yet have not seen any of the results from those wells yet. My suspect is if those wells come back and show any type of contamination that is beyond the limits that they would like to see, they're going to expand the area and we're going to put in some more new wells and we're going to wait again to see what comes back from them. Now, what happens out on Harbor Island is going to end up being a collaboration between the city and Eagle and the EPA. Yeah, we can go to them and say, this is what we would like to do, but they have to approve it. So the only way we're going to get to an end result is by working with them and coming to an agreement on what we think we can do there. One of the least remediation things is naturally parks and open spaces. Those require the least amount of remediation because there's the least amount of time spent there by people. So if we can get a determination of the area and a determination of the contaminants that are there and come up with a plan that we hopefully can work out with Eagle and the EPA, we can move forward and work out a solution for what we can actually do there.
Thank you, Mike. Kevin?
Same question? I'm sorry, I thought it was Karen, but that's okay.
No, that's not the order of the cards, but who is next?
Doesn't matter.
Karen?
Doesn't matter, go ahead.
Oh, okay. It's Karen. I'm going to go next. First of all, I want to tell you that I am not, this is not my forte, the environment and sustainability. I have learned so much in the past few months working with some amazing people with the Grand Haven Energy Organization, and they've connected me to a lot of sources, and I'm a lifelong learner, so I'm still learning. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a view of what I think needs to happen. And I do think we need a robust remediation of Harbor Island. I think we need to activate a sustainability commission that is really the GHEO, or a Grand Haven Energy Organization, or some ongoing commission to help us with all of the things that we need to do from a sustainability perspective. This is an ongoing, we need a sustainability plan. But getting back to the remediation, I think we need to do it. There is funding available. If you start to look at some of the announcements there, in August, there was a bipartisan infrastructure bill that set aside, I think, $1 billion. Nick, I'm not even sure if this is right, in Great Lakes restoration to address areas of interest. I don't know if we qualify for that, but we should look into it, especially around the PFAS. There's other EPA grants, the Michigan Clean Water and PFAS. I saw something around the Consolidated Contamination Risk Reduction. We should be all over all of those things and looking for ways that we can start to remediate and get that back to, so robust remediation I'm in favor of.
Thank you.
Kevin, I'm going to need you to move that microphone closer, please. Thanks.
I talk loud, though.
That's good.
Okay. Like Karen, I spent my whole career in in community and economic development, and from the environmental side, I learned a lot from field and the whole Grand Haven Energy Organization. I think we both want to thank them for taking us on a path that neither of us has ever gone down. But I think when it comes to Harbor Island, we obviously have to clean it up. I mean, we absolutely do have to move forward with that. We have to work with our with the EPA and with Eagle to find out exactly what the contamination is. I mean, that's been said by by the BLP candidates and the mayoral candidates. I don't think that's going to change for anyone that is looking at that. I think that if whatever we do with it, public recreation or whatever, I think the first step we have to do is get all the stakeholders in the room. I really believe that our federal officials, federal political officials, our state officials, industry, everybody's got to get into one room and discuss this, because if we try to go off on different tangents, I think it will. I think we'll take it just won't come together the way it should. I have found throughout my career that if we can get all the players in one room and discuss the how we're going to move forward with both the cleanup and the financing, then we will probably come to an agreement and a path that we can move forward. This is probably the biggest decision that this community is going to make in decades. The Harbor Island is how we're going to move ahead with that is going to be huge to this community. And if it's going to be public recreation, or if it's going to be, some other, I got to stop. Sorry. Thank you.
Time is up. This is an opportunity for the three of you to talk amongst yourselves. We really encourage you to do that. Does anyone have anything to add? It might be easier if you take that mic off the stand and you can just pass it back and forth. Thank you.
How about that? Is that better for everyone?
That's better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to camp onto what Kevin just said. I think we, in addition to getting into this, I think we don't know what the contaminants are today, but it doesn't mean that we can't do some planning. But we need to have the Citizen Commission. I did not hear that from Mayor Manetza. We must have. We would have avoided this whole BLP 12 months, 18 months, if we would have had the Citizen Commission working on this side by side with the city. So with the BLP. Let's let's do this right. Let's set up a committee to work with the city on the future of Harbor Island.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that. I think that's a great idea that Kevin brought up, is to get everybody in the room together and work through this and come up with a solution that's viable for everybody in the community as well. So it's a great idea.
Yeah, I don't think any decision can be made in a vacuum. I think that's kind of happened with Harbor Island, and I really believe that, as Karen said, that we really do have to get a consensus of all the players, and so that when we move forward, we aren't going to please everybody. Let's be honest. There's going to be people that don't agree with the path we move forward. But I think we at least got to engage the community and then move forward from there.
All right, we'll move on to the next question. In my magic bag. Kevin. Numerous municipalities in Michigan, including Holland, Montague, Grand Rapids, Traverse City, Petoskey, and Rockford, have sustainability goals or a community energy plan. Should the city of Grand Haven have a sustainability plan? Why or why not?
Yes, the Grand Haven absolutely has to have a sustainability plan. I guess what bothers me more than anything is, why haven't we had one now? You look at what's going on in Holland and some of the other cities. Holland has had theirs for 10 years. And here we are in Grand Haven, still considering it. We really, in talking to a lot of people over the last 4 or 5 months, Grand Haven was always viewed as a leader in this part of the state, and I think we've got away from that. And I think that a sustainability plan is, listen, it's not my forte, but there's a lot of people that know how to put one of these together, and I really believe that we have to get behind that and get that done. And I hope that the BLP will partner with us on that. Because it's going to encompass all of us. So I absolutely am in favor of it, and I hopefully we can move ahead very quickly.
Mike?
Yes, as a city, we should have a sustainability or energy plan. I'd support a committee of several council members, BLP members, local industry leaders, residents, a couple of high school Green Club students to research and recommend a plan. We need a plan if we're going to move forward in a positive direction. And involving the stakeholders would seem to be a good place to start when considering one. So if we can get everybody together and sit down and search a plan and make some recommendations that we can look at as a community and move forward, I think that would be great.
Karen?
Right, we definitely need a sustainability plan and a framework, but I'm going to go beyond that. I'm going to say that within that plan, we have to have outcomes that are as measured by to the residents and to the environment. We need metrics, we need benchmarks, and we need to track all of that and see how we're doing, because what doesn't get measured doesn't get done. And it all has to be integrated into the way we do everything within the city that includes capital investment projects. You don't just look at ROI, you look at what impact from a sustainability perspective. So if you don't have a plan, it's pretty certain we're not going to get a lot done. So yes, we do need a plan. And I just wanted to say, 10 years, Holland has had theirs for 10 years. You're right, Kevin. I found that astounding that we Grand Haven don't have that. We live right here on the water. This is an important value to our community. So we definitely need one.
Would anyone like to add anything else? I forgot to mention, in my apologies, Dennis Scott is not feeling well today, a candidate, and so that is why he is not here this evening. All right, Karen, on to our next question. Would you support a significantly enhanced recycling program for the city, including a facility for composting? This question comes from the Grand Haven Lakeshore chapter of the Citizens Climate Lobby.
Sure, I support that. Again, I think we need to do that within the context of a sustainability plan. The thing about putting together a plan, a full plan, is it also, you have outcomes, you have metrics, you have benchmarks, and you also have priorities. And let's just face it, everything is going to be a trade-off between affordability, and we, the people, will have to decide what we're willing to trade off as we make progress towards some of those goals. So absolutely, it should be a part of that. Where it falls in terms of priorities, I don't know. I don't know enough about it, but I do support it.
Kevin?
I've always taken recycling very, very seriously. Our household recycles as much waste as possible. And I think it would be great to have a composting facility. I'm not sure if it's should be in Grand Haven. Ottawa County has put together something of a compost facility and a recycling facility. I don't know if anybody has taken the time to go up to their place on Comstock, but myself and Elizabeth went up and we paid our $5 and signed up and got a bag and said, well, this is pretty neat. And so I said to the gentleman, I said, well, when I fill it up, I'm going to bring it back, and then what happens? And he says to me, well, you got to sign back up again, and you got to pay another $5. I go, wait a second. Does this make any sense? So, if we're going to truly do composting, I think we really have to put together a plan that makes sense. I don't think that's no incentive for anybody to do that. And I think if we're going to do it, I think we should do it on a countywide basis. And I think that all the municipalities should join in to do it.
Mike?
Yeah, it's a topic that's close to home. As Kevin knows, and most people who know me, we have chickens.
Yeah.
Hey, I was part of the planning, before the planning commission, and advocating for chickens and writing the ordinance so we could have them. We have 6 chickens. You want to talk about composting, you can just put about anything you want in there, and 10 minutes later it's gone. And the end result is some nice fertilizer that goes in with your yard waste that can go in your garden, and you can grow a beautiful garden. We've had tomatoes and green beans, yellow beans, radishes, green onions, cucumbers have all been in our garden that we've all done with composting from the chickens. So yeah, I support composting. I think it's a great plan. Recycling as well. I mean, our recycle bin is full every 2 weeks when it goes out by the curb. So the side benefit to all this is we get some really great eggs to eat. We get good composting. I know the county, as Kevin has said, has launched the pilot programs in Grand Haven and Holland. There was an article about it in the paper recently on the 24th that talks about it. But from the way Kevin makes it sound, boy, it doesn't sound like it's anything that most folks are going to want to participate in to any amount. If it's going to cost you $5 every time you want to go get a bag, I mean, I think there can be a better program than that can be brought up. So, yeah, I would support it.
Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add?
Well, I think the only thing that we have to really talk about is we have to make it affordable. We have to make it that right now it's very easy to put all your yard waste into another 55-gallon bucket, and it's, you know, we got 3 of those darn things now, so it takes up half my backyard. But, you know, I think we have to have something that's very easy for people to do and to use, and to move this forward, because I think it's a great way to you know, alleviate some of the waste that's now, you know, going into our landfills.
Kevin, that mic isn't working, so I'm afraid.
It is?
It is, you just have to.
We'll just.
You gotta get way closer to it.
Okay, I'll hold it right like this, okay?
There you
we
go. All right, one last question.
Sorry.
Mike, what's your stance on the relationship between green spaces versus development within the city? Would you side with one versus the other? This question from the Kitchell Lindquist Hartger Dune Preserve.
Well, that one's pretty simple. I support keeping our parks and green spaces for everyone to enjoy, and I would not support development or infill of those areas. As you've heard previously from several other folks who are up here talking about the same thing, they're a very important avenue for watershed and wildlife in our area. They act as a filter system for what comes off from all of our impermeable surfaces, to filter out the stuff that's going into the rivers and eventually into Lake Michigan and our drinking water supply. So having those green spaces is very important to our local ecology, as well as wildlife, ducks, the geese, the egrets, the whole works. I mean, they're just everywhere that you can see them, and it's great bird watching opportunities. And as the Audubon Society has said in their latest study, there has been a decline in some of those populations, and they're contributing that to the watershed and what is in some of the water and nesting habitats around here. So the more that we can do to preserve those habitats and create greater spaces for the wildlife and for us is all the better.
Karen.
You know, one of the things that I loved the most about when we moved to Grand Haven was the amount of park space in, you know, trails in Ottawa, in all of Ottawa County, not just in the city of Grand Haven. I think this is this is an obvious, yes, I'd like to see the green, us retain green space or look for opportunities where we can create more green space. I think it's part of a bigger look at how we're doing planning and how we're using certain resources. I think it includes, you know, I think we need to take a good look at inventorying all potential contaminated land in Grand Haven and look at how we might remediate some of that. We need to look at universal testing for private wells. Why? Because we have a burden on people who are least likely to be able to afford to pay for it to monitor whether or not they're getting water that's safe, and is there contaminated land next to them. So I think we've got to do all of that together, but yes, I'm in favor of the green space.
Kevin.
We are blessed with vast amounts of green space in this community. You know, from the public access along the river, the you know, the green space that is there. This was all a vision, as was in one of the other questions of the former Mayor Bill Creason. The boardwalk, to the huge number of parks and open spaces that Karen just talked about, I believe we're second to none when it comes to that. We are very, very, you know, I come from a much more urban environment, and we are you know, in great shape when it comes to that. But I don't think there's ever a time, you know, that we should take sides on this issue. You know, anytime that we do development, if we do development, it has to include addressing the environment. We have to make sure that we introduce some green infrastructure, green roofs, proper disposal of rainwater are all very critical things when we go into development. This is all available. You know, developers and investors will try to get away with whatever they can, but we have to have a city and a plan and a sustainability plan that tells them, well, if you want to do this, this is what we want you to do. And I think it's very important that we don't take sides when it comes to this. That if somebody wants to come in here and do some type of development, that the green spaces has got to be part of that development.
Does anyone have anything else they would like to add? Okay, I did want to thank the League of Women Voters for for their advice, their sharing of the nameplates, the time cards, our timekeepers, a big thanks to them, our underwriters, the Grand Haven High School Green Club, the Kitchell-Lindquist Hartger Dunes Preserve, Grand Haven Lakeshore Citizens Climate Lobby, local members of the Wetlands Watch, Lakeshore Water Protectors, the Michigan chapter of the Sierra Club, the West Michigan Environmental Action Council, the Alliance for the Great Lakes, and a special thanks to Grand Haven Energy Organization and the Michigan League of Conservation Voters for being the significant underwriters of this town hall. I did want to add something. On October 28th at the Grand Armory, they're going to be having an event that's going to have a DJ and dancing, and what they're trying to do is get young voters out to register to vote. So if you have a niece or a nephew, or you have kids still living in your home that haven't registered to vote, this is an event for them to come out to, have a great time, and get them registered to vote. That'll be on October 28th. Thank you so much for coming out. Round of applause for everyone and the wonderful job that they did. If you'd like to make a donation, there is a basket at the table with all the snacks, and I will see you on the radio tomorrow at 6 a.m. Be safe.